interesting to talk about if you want to or not, but you're talking about that Temple of the Dog, because that's a real kind of cult.
Yeah.
That's a real cult.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. I mean, I can't imagine, like, gigging and finding out I've lost, like, my best friend, right? Because I remember when I found out about it, we were on the last show of the Voivod, Soundgarden, and whoever was the opening act. We were at the last show of that tour, and I think we were back to having Faith No More. I think it was Voivod, Soundgarden, and Faith No More, but I could be wrong. So we're at a place that used to be in Brooklyn called L'Amour's, a club, very famous club, and I knew about it during the day, but I don't think we told Chris because the gentleman in question from Mother Love Bone, Andrew Wood, I think it was Andrew Wood, yeah, who had passed, like he and Chris were best friends and like shared an apartment for a while and all that. So I don't think anybody told Chris about it until...
How did you guys find out?
I found out, I want to say like the manager Susan was there, or I don't know. I knew about it, but I have like a buddy of mine, we were talking about it, Jim Sorensen, who used to do merch for all those Seattle bands, is like, well, nobody in the band knew about it till after the show, but I feel like I talked to Kim about it, like the Kim knew, but I don't know. I can't, my memory's vague on it, so I'm not going to say a yay or nay, but I just know that he found out afterwards. And for me, the horrible part is that we had to go to a club in Hoboken, New Jersey called Maxwell's the next day and make up a show that they hadn't been able to perform when they were out in the end of '89, when they started Loud Love, right? Because I wasn't part of that. I didn't come in until like January 2nd or 3rd or whenever we started in Montreal. And I'm just like I'm like, man, that's just got to be terrible, right? Like, you got to go do a show now and you're hurting and whatnot, and but that's the biz, right? I mean, it's just, and it's not just music, it's film, TV, anything to do with performing or whatever. It's the old adage, like, show goes on, man, and I mean, there you go. So, but yeah, and then, okay, so that leads us into the Temple of the Dog thing. So I wasn't around for like writing or recording it, right? But how I was involved is in the beginning of Bad Motorfinger. So in '91, it would have been like what, early fall or towards fall or maybe end of summer, right? In Los Angeles by LAX, there was this thing called the Concrete Foundations, and it was basically like if you were a metal band or a hard rock band, right? You try to go there, you try to be able to get to play, or because there was like all kinds of industry people there and whatnot. So we were there with Soundgarden, and I believe Pearl Jam was there as well. And they did, I don't know how many songs from Temple of the Dog, but it was Chris and Eddie Vedder and Matt and Stone and Jeff, and it was like, that was the first time I had seen, wow, I'd heard it, right? But like, wow, these guys are doing Temple of the Dog sounds. This is cool as hell. I mean, I think that they actually did like a show or two in Seattle, but I could be wrong. Don't quote me. But like, again, I don't know how many songs it was, but I was out there like putting the monitors together, right? I was like, more of this, more of that, getting Eddie's mic up and going for him and Chris's and all that, because it was just kind of like thrown together. Like, I mean, Soundgarden, I want to say we played a proper short set or whatever, but I don't know. I don't know about PJ. I just remember we did that, right? And I also remember seeing a band, I think it was that year, or it might have been the year I snuck in, because in '92 I snuck in with my buddy Gumby, right? Because I was in town with doing rehearsals with GNR before, I want to say it was before we went to South America, so maybe it was a little later because that was November. So maybe I'm getting the time period mixed up. But I don't feel like it was that late the year before, because like it was definitely before we went and supported GNR, and it seems like that was more like we didn't start that until like November. I don't know. But there's this band called LSD, Life, Sex, and Death, and they're really good, and nobody knows about them, right? But the singer was a homeless guy, right? And it was weird because like I remember walking by and like I smelled it first, and I'm sorry to say that, but that's the way it was. And I see this like blanket, old beat up blanket with obviously somebody under it, and it was the singer. And it was just like, oh, it smelled horrible, but man, those guys were fucking amazing, right? if you ever can listen to it, right? I can't remember I only heard one album, right? But the song on it that's my favorite, it's called Some Fucking Shit Ass. And right, exactly, you're chuckling. When my buddy told me about it, I did the same thing, but it is really, really good. So I got to see those guys, which is cool. I know I'm getting off track, but it's like making me think about this. It was either 91 or 92, because those are the only 2 years I attended, right? And then we were talking about later, they did it one more time when there used to be a magazine called Rip Magazine, right? And they would have a party, I want to say, what was it, the Hollywood Palladium or whatever, but someplace down in Hollywood, a pretty good sized room. And with Soundgarden, we played the Rip Party, and I think Pearl Jam played it as well that year. For me, the highlight was Spinal Tap, because Spinal Tap played. And man, those guys were in character from the minute they walked in, right? I mean, they were Spinal Tap, and it was, being a huge fan of the movie and everything, it was amazing. But they also did a couple of the Temple of the Dog songs there. Chris and Eddie, I remember it, but again, who knows? But that was a good time. I remember that being a good time. One other thing that like Chris used to do is when we were in clubs, if in clubs where like there was a low ceiling, right, and the front lighting truss, if he could take the microphone and throw it over the truss and it would come down, he would like try to swing on the mic cord, all right, you know, like freaking Tarzan, okay? And then of course the mic would never work, so you'd have to get another cord. You always have a spare, right? So okay, we'll go with the spare. There's one time that it worked, and I walked out at the end of the show and I looked at the cable, and the cable said Canary on it, right? C-A-N-A-R-E, which is a Japanese cable manufacturer. And I have used Canary cable exclusively since that moment. Because I was like, man, if they can do, they're the only one that worked, right? And all these mic I've seen go over, they're the only one that worked. So there's an advert for Canary cables. And you know, the other thing I'm going to say, and again, this is just my opinion with Chris, I've read interviews with guys in the studio with him, with producers, that said like he projected so much, he's blowing up these mics in the studio and all that. And like when I was working with him, it was the exact opposite. Like it just couldn't get enough out of him on stage to get his monitors loud enough, and we would have so many friggin' wedges around him, you know? So I don't know. I don't know. I'm just saying that like with me, you just couldn't get enough out of him, you know? And the other thing that I knew that like with Bad Motorfinger, right? We were rehearsing in this recording studio in Seattle, a vast recording. And the owner at the time was Stuart Hallerman, who had mixed the band before that live. And I remember they were recording some like B-side stuff, right? Some covers and whatnot. And Chris had to do the vocals on them. And like when he did that, everybody was out, right? It was just him and the engineer, right? So I just find it interesting, you know, these stories about blowing mics up and all that. Look, things change, people change, whatever. I wasn't there for a lot of it. But when I was there, it was so hard to get enough projection out. Like, you know, because if you got somebody who's like, you know, gets on it and whatnot, it's a lot easier to get the monitors to a volume, right? Because you don't have to turn them up so loud, they feed back less, et cetera, et cetera. So I always, like, it was just an interesting thing with me, like, well, I don't know, maybe he changed or his voice got stronger or whatever, but all right, let's continue on here. I got to go back to the goggles. You know what? I'm just going to talk here, and if we never use this, fine. Matt Cameron, the drummer on Loud Love, hated photo shoots, and the only way you do them is if you got shit-faced drunk. And if you can find the poster, there's a poster out there with 3 of the guys in the band holding him as he lays across him. Shit-faced drunk, okay? Sorry, Matt, I let your secret out. Yeah, and Chris used to take gallons of water and just smash them on the stage, and they go everywhere, right? So we go through like, what, 3-4 gallons of water a night. If he could get his hands on them, just pow! Go everywhere. Yeah, all right. Sorry, Alan, with the glasses off.
That's all right.
You know, and then like he would use the microphone like a hammer on the stage, just beat, like we go through 2, 3, 58s a night. And I mean, we used to, because we weren't carrying them right at the time, we'd tell the club owners, it's like, look, we'll pay for them, not a problem. But this is what's going to happen, right? We'd break horn lenses on monitors because he'd take the mic stand and smash it in there and break those. And yeah, there was a lot of destruction. A lot of destruction we paid for. Rolling Stone cover. So, to the best of my knowledge, the first cover that Nirvana did for Rolling Stone was supposed to be a Soundgarden cover. But because they just became so big so fast, they gave it to Nirvana instead of Soundgarden. And I mean, we'd like to all believe that everybody loved each other and everything, but I seem to remember there was a little bit of animosity there about that. Which I'd be pissed. Okay, I worked for the band and I was pissed. I'm not gonna lie about it. It's like, it's like I say, it's like when it comes to bands and crews, it's not a fucking club, it's a gang, man. It really is, all right? And anybody who says different, fuck that, okay? At least for me. Because, I'll fucking fight for the band. I've done it before. You know what I mean? And I think most people feel the same way. All right. So let's see. Oh, that was another thing that blew me away. So Kim not only turned me on to Ministry, but when we were playing this club called Mississippi Nights in St. Louis, right? And we were there the day before so we could go see the show. So Kim's like, come on, let's go see the show. And I wasn't in a big hurry to see it because the headline act was a band called 24/7 Spies, which I had seen before. I'd seen them at the Haunt in Ithaca, right? Where I had my PA. But there was this band called Primus that were opening that Kim knew. And he's like, man, you gotta go see Primus. These guys are incredible. So I walked in the door and my jaw hit the ground. Like, it was like, holy crap, these guys, you're right, they're crazy. Like, I only got to see the last 4 songs, but wow, they just blew me away. I mean, to this day, it's like one of those shows that ranks way up because wow. So I have to thank you for that, Kim. Thank you very much, sir.